What's good, ladies and gentlemen? So today I am going to talk about social media and why I think that everyone should limit their social media usage to about 30 minutes a day if you really want to fulfill your potential as a human being. And I really think that any usage over this amount is going to limit your ability to really express your creativity and your potential as a human being to fulfill your mission in life, what you were put on earth to do. Because consumerism is really pushed today, but we were not born into this world to consume as many material goods as possible, to buy as much Chloe and Prada and Gucci and Dolce and Gabbana as possible. That is not why we are put here on earth, although that is certainly what we are taught in academia, because the whole purpose of academia is not really to produce intelligent, thoughtful, young women and men that are capable of critical thought and capable of fulfilling their limitless, and it really is limitless, creative potential, but rather it is to socially condition them into the thought processes of society, which is to go work for someone else for 20, 30, 40, 50 years until you retire, make someone else filthy rich while they pay you a fraction of the salary they pay themselves, even though you're doing the bulk of the work. You and all your fellow workers are doing the bulk of the work to make this person filthy rich, and then we're really brainwashed to get the best grades possible, to get the highest paying job possible, to be set on this career so we can consume as many things and buy as many brand name things as possible. But really, if you ask any child, say that's 5, 6, 7 years old, if you have nephews or nieces, or what their purpose in life is, no child would answer to be a consumer, to consume as much as possible. And for everyone listening, you have to agree that I don't care where in the world you live, whether it's in Asia, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in the Americas. I don't even care if you live in Antarctica. Maybe Antarctica is the only one of the 7 continents where the consumerism mindset hasn't infiltrated humanity, where people believe that the more the more brand name clothes they own, the the more expensive ride they own, and the better home they own, that they are a better human being than their peers. Maybe in Antarctica, but I think on every other continent on this world, consumerism prevails. And actually, before I continue, can I ask you, whether you're listening to this podcast on YouTube or on iTunes or Spotify, if you can be so kind to find this podcast episode on YouTube, just look for the DAO of SK Wealth Academy, TAO of SK Wealth Academy, episode number 14. I believe it's episode number 14. If not, it's around the area, number 13, 14, 15. And just find it. It's going to be talking, the title will be the one task that will immediately improve your life. And just, if you can comment below in the YouTube comment section and just indicate also in your comments, just a few words. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be even a sentence. Just comment like here and 52 views, just the number of views that were indicated in the YouTube view count at the time you listen to it. And the reason I'm asking everyone to do this is so that I can make a determination of whether or not need to change the name of my channel, all my social media in the future, from SK Wealth Academy to something different. Because the reason I'm actually leaving YouTube, I think I'll upload one more podcast after this on YouTube, and that will be it officially. I'll be done with YouTube. It's because YouTube has demonetized all my videos. All basic of the big social media platforms have done the same. And so I need to know if I can still use that SK Wealth Academy name going forward. And this would be a huge, enormous help to me. So if you could just take just 10 seconds out of your day just to head to YouTube. If you're listening to this on YouTube, just go to the comment section, Just write a few comments and how many views or in the view count when you're listening. That's all I am asking. I would be so eternally grateful if you would do this. Okay, so now back to the podcast. So I think social media, especially Instagram, certainly contributes to that. That being the pursuit of excessive materialism, because people put their best foot forward, and people also put photos sometimes that aren't even real. Because I remember in Thailand, there's a Thai flight attendant that photoshopped all these pictures of herself, and I can't remember where, but just looked like she was jet setting across Europe, and I can't remember the exact countries, but cities. But it could have been like Milan and Florence and Rome in Italy. Could have been Lisbon in Portugal, Barcelona and Madrid in Spain, and Berlin and Cologne in Germany. But in any event, it turned out all to be fake. It was all Photoshop. And for those that actually do have a jet setting lifestyle, um, I've worked with very high net worth people as a private banker, private wealth manager, many, many moons ago. And I can tell you that wealth does not bring happiness, because some of the wealthiest people I knew uh, really treated me the worst as any human being could treat me. So they obviously were not happy. I could tell that they were miserable. And certainly, there are wealthy people that are very, very happy, but I'm saying money does not buy happiness, and that's what we are being taught incorrectly in academics. And I know it's not direct, it's not like teachers are saying, go out there and try to make as much money as possible because that will make you happy, but it's a subtle thing, it's social conditioning. That's what I told you, it's Skinnerian operant conditioning. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, because I am going to go into these topics in detail when I launch my SK Wealth Academy. And even though wealth is in the name, S for smart, K for knowledge, so it's Smart Knowledge Wealth Academy. Even though wealth is in the name, again, the definition of wealth for me is more holistic than anyone else. It's not just looking at how many material things we can consume and do we own more expensive watches and Rolexes and more expensive rides than our neighbors. That's not it at all. Wealth, when I say wealth, I mean a wealth of mental health, a wealth of physical health, wealth of financial wealth. So it's holistic. It's everything together. And if we don't have tip-top psychological health, if we're not truly, truly happy every day, and I mean having a baseline foundation of happiness every day, and if we don't have a wealth of physical health where we have back problems or we have shoulder problems or it's hard for us just to hike up a mountain, then that to me is infringing upon your quality of life, because you can't enjoy the great outdoors. One of the great pleasures of life is in nature, because one of the most beautiful places I've ever been is to Alaska. And if I were somehow physically disabled, not, and please don't get my words wrong, because I'm not referencing anyone that is in a wheelchair, anyone that might be suffering from debilitating diseases like cerebral palsy or anything like that, because certainly all of those people are certainly capable still of enjoying the great outdoors and of doing many things. But I'm talking someone that just does not have the discipline to watch what they eat. So they eat a lot of high caloric, low nutrition types of foods that just make you fat and obese. Because this is crazy, because in America, they say now the average man in America is about 5'10". So and about 195. Actually, I think it was 198 pounds, so almost 200 pounds. That's the average person in America. That's crazy, because I'm 2 inches taller than that, and then 30 pounds less. So I'm like 170 pounds and 6 foot tall. And I've been that weight for like years and years and years, and it's almost the same weight I was in like university. So it's just a matter of having discipline and of being educated about nutrition, not eating for taste specifically, but eating for nutrition. Because a lot of people say, well, that's kind of boring, but it's not. You can eat food that tastes great, that is super nutritious for you as well. So It's just a matter of being educated. And the thing is about sugar is as addictive per some scientific studies as heroin is. Well, at least in rats, but I know rats don't really replicate human beings. So you can't just say just because rats will push a lever to get another dose of sugar when they have a choice of sugar and heroin, they actually will switch from the heroin to sugar. And they say in rats, sugar is more addictive than heroin. But in human beings, sugar is certainly addictive. I don't know if that scientific study necessarily translates over into humans as well. But in the fact that sugar is as addictive or more addictive than, say, an opioid drug like heroin or OxyContin. And, but the crazy thing is, it is addictive because I discovered, number one, I gave up soda, so I don't drink soda anymore. And I used to have cravings for soda all the time. And I still sometimes will have cravings if I'm out in a restaurant and I feel like, I just want like one soda. But I have the discipline not to order it. Or if I do, maybe I'll drink like one soda every few months. So that's kind of okay. But here's the other thing, is that when you give up sugar, your body actually stops craving it. So that's the crazy thing. You just have to try to go without it for like a week, and then 2 weeks is kind of easy. It becomes easier and easier. So it's just the initial discipline to get over that phase when your body's going to be craving sugar where it no longer is. Because if you go for like a month, and a month is not even that long of a time. Think about 1 month out of your entire life. That is just a little speck of a dot on your life timeline. If you give up sugar for 1 month, I guarantee you, because I used to crave like pies and cookies and stuff like that. And, I would just eat dessert every once in a while. And I was never a big sugar junkie because I never really craved sugar that much. But even in just giving up the little sugar that I did consume, I found that my body changed a lot. And I also found my energy levels changed a lot. So my energy increased a tremendous amount when I gave up a lot of that sugar. And I'm not totally sugar free, so I do still consume sugar from time to time. But when you give it up for a month, it's weird how your cravings will actually change because your body adjusts. It's just like intermittent fasting, which I've spoken about before, so I'm not going to speak about on this podcast. But if you want to go look it up, I do intermittent fasting every day and for about 17 hours, and I have no problem doing it. Whereas I used to wake up early in the morning, like 7 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, and be starving every day when I woke up. Now I don't even get hungry until about noon. So your body adjusts because we consume way more calories than we actually need. So that's why the average American is 5'10" tall. I don't know how many centimeters that is. I think I'm 183 centimeters. So maybe 5'10" is like 178 or 77 centimeters or something like that. And as far as kilograms is concerned, 200 kilograms is probably like 200 pounds is probably like 90 kilograms around. Maybe 91, 92 kilograms, because I know the rest of the world, besides Americans, uses kilograms, not pounds. So that kind of is crazy to me, because that is way overweight. And then the average woman, they say, or average woman, I think this is adult over 18 years old in America, is 5'4" tall and 170 pounds is my weight. That is insanity, man, because men have much more dense bones and also much more musculature. So for a man like me who's 6 foot tall to be 170 pounds, that's like normal if you are always engaged in athletics, which I am, in some type of martial arts, shadow boxing, weightlifting, calisthenics, like push-ups and pull-ups. I do all that stuff all the time. So we're going to have much more musculature than even, female athletes. Men just typically have. There's nothing sexist about that comment. It's just physiology and biology. Men will have more muscle mass. So a female should not be the same weight. And plus, that I'm talking about 5'4" female. They say the average American female is 5'4", 170 pounds. And I am 6 inches taller, or I'm sorry, 8 inches taller than that. That's crazy. So let's get back to the social media trend. So why I say social media is really contributing to the decline of the empire, decline of society. Well, number one, before I get into my reasons, let me tell you what people associated and affiliated with Facebook said. Because number one, Zuckerberg, or I don't know if it was Zuckerberg that actually said it, but it was it was Facebook. They just said Facebook, so some Facebook executive said this. I'm looking at the article right now. They said they promoted a case study on its own website in 2011 that praised its usefulness, quote, as a market research tool and as a platform for ad saturation that can be used to change public opinion in any political campaign, end quote. So basically, Facebook is telling you, the executives, I don't know if it's Zuckerberg or someone else, that they're bragging about that they can change any public opinion in the political atmosphere for people that are on Facebook. And that's horrible, because what they're telling you is they're basically manipulating your opinions to believe that you may not believe if you don't use Facebook. And that's crazy. But that is all social media. All social media engages in confirmation bias, which by itself, for me in SK Wealth Academy, I say there are two concepts, two psychological concepts that keep people from reaching their intellectual peak. One is confirmation bias, and the other one's cognitive dissonance. So let me just tell you what confirmation bias is, because Facebook is bragging about their ability to use confirmation bias to change your opinion, to get you to believe whatever they want you to believe about any political belief. And trust me, they're doing this about politics. They're also doing this about religion. They're also doing this about any other of a number of topics, whether it's immigration or any other, politically pertinent, relevant topic of discussion that is prominent in the mainstream narrative in your nation at the time. So confirmation bias is basically just feeding you information that is going to confirm your existing belief, whether right or wrong. So if it's right, that's good, but a lot of people's beliefs are not exactly right, and a lot of times they're wrong, or just even a smidgen wrong, because any topic of debate is really not black and white. And there are lots of shades of contextual gray that lend sophistication and that lends intellect to such a debate, rather than splitting it, just into black and white, like say a Marvel comic book superhero movie where there's Superman who is good and Lex Luthor who is evil, or Star Wars like there is Luke Skywalker that is good, or Darth Vader that is evil, or Spider-Man that is good and the Green Goblin that is evil, or Batman that is good and the Joker that is evil. Life is not like comic books, and that's what social media wants us to believe, like it's a comic book. So they want to manipulate our opinions, and especially if it's something that they want us to believe, they can easily do that, because what they do is they feed you news information in your news feed, primarily from friends and family that are going to think like you, so you're never going to challenge your own thinking. And if it's not from friends and family, then they're going to feed you news that you search for on Facebook. So it's going to be the same sentiment, the same opinion that you hold. So you're never going to be challenged to intellectually analyze and to be introspective about your opinions, and really to break them down, to understand where their origins come from. Because a lot of people's beliefs come from being told to believe something by the media. It's not something that we have embraced because we actually did the research to understand the topic in depth and to really look at all sides, because like I said, there's just not a black and a white. So you have to look at the left side, the right side, the more left side that's kind of more left-centric, the right side that's more centric, and then the centric side. So you have to look at the wide diversity of spectrum of opinions to really understand the truth. But this isn't, we're just being fed like the far right and the far left opinion, or just two. I hate using those words like right and left. So let me just say, we're being fed opinions that exist at the opposite ends of the spectrum, because social media has been weaponized to actually make people more hostile towards each other. Because if you think about it, okay, hopefully I won't lose this thought, because I want to also let you know what another former Facebook executive said about Facebook. But I have the same opinions about Instagram and other social media as well. So Chama Palihapitiya. Palihapitiya. Okay, I think that's how you pronounce his word. Actually, that name sounds very Thai to me, so I'm wondering if that's a Thai person. But he was a former president of user growth at Facebook, and he said he now expresses his regret for building tools that destroy quote unquote, the social fabric of how society works. So he goes on to elaborate. He says, the short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops that we have created are destroying how society works. No civil discourse, no cooperation, misinformation, mistruth, end quote. This is not about Russian ads, he added. This is a global problem. It is eroding the core foundations of how people behave by and between each other, end quote. And even Sean Parker, who I'm sure a lot of people know his name better than Chamath Palihapitiya, because he was he was responsible for also, he's one of the co-creators of that music file sharing network. Man, it's escaping me right now. But anyway, Sean Parker was an ex-Facebook president, and he said the site was made to exploit human vulnerability. So he said it exploits vulnerability in human psychology by creating a social validation feedback loop. And he said he's something of a conscientious objector to using social media, which is also a stance echoed by his colleague Chamath. Now, Chamath says, I can't control them, meaning Zuckerberg, but he said, I can control my decision, which is that I don't use that shit. I can control my kids' decisions, which is that they're not allowed to use that shit, end quote. So, this is also a very revealing thing about social media, because the very inventors of either social media applications or the devices used to access and distribute social media, like iPads and iPhones. Do you know that Steve Jobs, before he died, said he told the media, when the media asked him, when a journalist asked him, hey, what do your kids think of the new iPad? Steve Jobs said, I don't let my children use the iPad. So that in itself should tell you a great deal of how we're being exploited and how we're being dumbed down, how we're being made ignorant, how we're actually even being made more aggro and aggressive towards one another through social media. Because like I said, they break down news, number one, through confirmation bias, so that they're dumbing down our intellect in that manner, because we're not encouraged to explore other viewpoints that often have a lot of validity to them and would change our own opinions and views, but they're reinforcing our own narrow viewpoints. And not only are they reinforcing them, they're making them stronger, and they're making us more emotionally attached to them. Because think about that. If we're seeing the same news that validates our opinion every day, we're going to think our opinion, because we think we're receiving a wide range of diversity in news, but all we see are news that validates our opinions. We're going to become so emotionally attached to that opinion. When someone disagrees with us, then we're going to react very, very, very like childishly to the person who disagrees with us, because it wasn't even like this 10 years ago. People respected other people's opinions when they disagreed with them. But today it seems like on so many issues that if you disagree with someone, that not only will they start yelling at you and start saying that your differing opinion is unacceptable, but then they try to raise a mob to exact violence, some type of violent physical act towards you. And this did not exist. This rose up. I saw this type of mentality rise up with the rise of social media use in society. So this is why I say, well, beyond a shadow of a doubt, social media is tearing apart the fabric of society. And I remember it even is destroying friendships too, besides the fact that everyone knows when you're out with friends many times, even at dinner, or you can look around when you're out, whether in a coffee shop, at a restaurant, you will see couples not even talking to each other, each one looking at their social media on their smartphones. Or even sometimes I've seen tables of 6 or 7 people with only 2 people talking to each other and the rest of the 5 just staring at their smartphones. So it certainly is retarding the development of intimacy and friendships and relationships and even loyalty, because when I was a kid, we didn't have smartphones, so we couldn't SMS, you couldn't text someone 2 minutes before you're supposed to meet or 5 minutes before you're supposed to meet, say, hey, you know what, I really don't feel like going out, so I'm sorry, but I'll catch you next time. That didn't happen. 99.9% of the time, if you made plans with someone because you couldn't text them and cancel, you showed up. So the loyalty became stronger because through those, and plus, when you met face to face, you didn't have smartphones, so you just talked. You were always talking. Your friendships were always growing stronger. And think about all the time. They say, some studies have revealed that people, they say the average, and I can't remember what country, maybe it's the average American spends about 50 hours, and probably teenagers. I don't remember the age demographic, but since teens spend more time on social media than most adults, although adults still spend a horrifyingly large amount of time devoted to social media every day. They're saying, I think that teens spend up to 50 to 70 hours a month on social media. That's crazy, because think about, for those of us that are working every day, most of us work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's 40 hours. So 50 to 70 hours a month on social media is 1 to 2 full extra weeks. That's half the month almost. 70, 80 hours is half, right? So 70 is almost there. Think about all this extra time you have to do something that would actually lead to fulfilling your life better. You could meditate, you could go to yoga, you could learn jujitsu, you could learn a different hobby, you can learn how to play the guitar, you could learn how to paint, you could take drawing lessons, you could go rock climb. People say, I don't have time to do this. When I ask people, hey, you want to train with me in martial arts? I don't have time for this. But I guarantee you that the great majority of those people, if they downloaded an app that checked, because people also, studies have shown that people grossly underestimate how much time they spend on social media every day. So people may say, oh, I only spend 30 minutes a day. And then if they use the apps that actually log in and check your login and log out of all social media, then a lot of times people, wind up discovering that they spend 2 to 3 hours a day on social media, and they only believe that they spend 30 minutes a day. So if you download that app, there are many apps out there. I don't know the names off the top of my head, but I encourage all of you to do it just to see how much time you're wasting. And if you say you're not addicted, here's another thing. If the smartphone is the first thing you reach for when you wake up, and it's not just to turn off your alarm, but you start looking through social media, and the smartphone is the last thing you look at before you go to bed, you have an addiction problem, okay? So for many people that have told me they have problems with insomnia, not being able to sleep, I said just leave your smartphone outside of your bedroom, or turn it off or put it on airplane mode like an hour before you go to bed, and don't take it off airplane mode and check anything before you go to bed. And then when you wake up, same thing. If you use it for your alarm clock, turn it off. Don't start looking at it. And just do this for 30 days, and you're going to see probably your problems of insomnia will go away. So, okay, I got my train of thought back. So I was going to say the other way that social media is dumbing us down is changing the way we communicate. I actually think that universities are going to need a class for all, a prerequisite introductory class on the art of communication 101 for all incoming freshmen, because people really are truly losing the ability to use vocabulary, to use verbal communication, because it's all about emojis now. It's all about emojis and little cartoons. So, the most common type of communication on, say, Instagram and Facebook is a like. So a like requires no cognitive thought, no creativity, it's not really exercising your brain at all. And in fact, it's just like an instinct. It's reducing your communication levels to a 3-year-old that can't even communicate, hasn't learned to verbalize yet, or not a 3-year-old, but maybe like an 18-month-old that hasn't learned to verbalize yet, that will just point at things, just smile, because the emojis are like, the instinctual reactions of baby infants, because 3 years old, the infant is talking, so I'd be like a year younger. So it's like the emojis represent anger, sadness, surprise, laughter, and love, and they're basically the same depth of communication that you can find in a chimpanzee or a monkey, but chimps actually are smarter because you can teach them like sign language, so they actually can communicate on a much greater complex level than just emojis of social media. So we're being dumbed down to even lower than chimp level, I think, in that regard. And it's just not a theory I have. I actually see people losing the ability to communicate. Like, for example, I don't know if it's just me, so you can comment in the podcast below if you really believe that manners is a lost art, because I think manners is a lost art among kids, young kids, and even adults today. Because I lived in this building, okay, in Asia for more than 6 years. And in 6 years, I must have gone in and out of that building thousands of times, right? Literally, I'm not exaggerating, because think thousands of times, right? And thousands of times with other people. And I was the only person that would ever say hello and thank you for the security, for the doorman, when he would open the door for me. And that is crazy. And thousands of times of interactions that people would not acknowledge this doorman's presence and just be human, just be like, hey, how's it going today? Have a good day. It just because that person is a human being. And now all we probably see in front of that place of that person's face is that smiley emoji or that crying, laughing emoji. So people don't even communicate anymore, because this is something I didn't see 10 years ago. When I would walk in and out of like friends, but when I was visiting in New York, see the doorman and be like, hey, what's going on? How you doing? And they would reciprocate, and I saw people, I actually saw the doorman know people's names at times, be like, how you doing, Julie? Did you have a good day? She'd be like, yeah, how about you? So people would communicate, and that is ridiculous. I'm not even making that story up. In 6+ years and thousands of interactions, I was the only person in my building that communicated with the doorman. And I think that is because of social media, because I see that not just in teens, I see that in adults. I see adults all the time at the gym, like, on their smartphones, texting. First of all, you're not working out if you can text on your smartphone, okay? So that's why you shouldn't be using social media and while you're at the gym, because unless you're just like in a rest break period, because you can't be running and really exerting any type of physical energy if you can text at the same time. At least to me. I mean, I'm not someone that feels like you have to exercise till you can't walk anymore, but you got to put your time in and you got to put your effort in to really get exercise. So I see people all the time just walking around the gym on their smartphones, not even looking up. And that, to me, man, you got to separate that out. You got to give yourself a break. And in fact, my advice is to only give yourself a 30-minute period every day where you use social media. And don't use social media any more time outside of that, because what using it does, especially if you're just consistently liking other people's comments and sending emojis and you're not really communicating. First of all, most of the time you're not communicating because you're communicating with strangers and people you never know and people you'll never meet. And there's nothing wrong with that, because there's some great people out there you will meet on social media. Maybe someday you'll meet in person and form a true friendship. But any friendship in which you haven't met someone, that's a virtual friendship. It's not real. It's like almost like I can't remember that Notre Dame football player that got catfished and said he was in love with this girl who he never met. That's crazy. How can you be in love with a girl you've never met face to face and had a real conversation with? That to me is insanity. That to me is something like what a 1.5-year-old baby would say if he or she could vocalize. But so that's what I mean when I say social media is destroying the fabric of not only society, but it's destroying people's psychological intellect, where it's reducing them to really the emotional maturity of an infant. Because there is a thing that all athletes know that's called muscle memory. So, for instance, when I was sparring and training super, super hard in martial arts, there are times when my teacher would tell me, he said, hey, I could see it's not instinctual. I could see you thinking, right? I could see you thinking, oh, I'm going to plan like a low low left kick, and then I'm gonna follow up with like a left hook. And he could say he said he saw my brain kind of processing how to react to like a straight right, a straight left. Am I going to counter with like a kidney shot, or am I going to counter with a kick to the calves or a kick to the thighs? And he said that stuff you got to learn because you're not training enough. He said you got to practice like some of these kicks 1,000 times. You got to practice sparring where it becomes instinctual, where you're not thinking about it and you're just reacting. Because he said it's that split fraction of a second that's going to separate whether you strike that person, your opponent first, or that your opponent strikes you first. And that's all muscle memory, because you're wired where you practice things so much that just becomes instinct and you're reacting to it. You're not thinking about it anymore. And that's what I feel like the use of using emojis to communicate does. It actually is regressing the wiring of our neuronal synapses in our brain to not communicate, because we're creatures that want to communicate verbally. You know, we read books, our vocabulary expands, we're able to express ourselves better in a more contextual manner, because as I said, life exists in the grays. It doesn't exist in the black. I mean, there are black and whites, right? Like black and white, murder is wrong. That's pretty black and white, right? But most of life exists in the gray zones, in the gray areas, and you need a good vocabulary to be able to articulate exactly what you're feeling, exactly what you want to express as far as your opinion. And emoticons take that all, or emojis take that all away and reduce us to a primitive level. Instead of enhancing our intellect, it degrades our intellect. And lastly, that addiction to social media is real, because scientists have studied the brain responses to receiving a like, or every time your smartphone vibrates. I would recommend turning all your notifications off, because I do. So therefore, you're not tempted to look, because I said I've bricked out a certain time of the day where 30 minutes I'll look at my social media, and that's it. And then I'll see like anybody that wrote me that I need to respond to during that time, etc. That's about it. And so the buzzes, the vibrations, the different notification tones, they actually release, scientists have found, small amounts of dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter in your brain that makes you feel good. So that's why you become addicted to it. But it's actually, even though it makes you feel good, it's actually negative, because it doesn't enhance anything about, it doesn't lift up your spirit, because it's only temporary, and doesn't have long sustainable effects on the level of your happiness in life. So while on the surface level it appears to be a positive thing, it's actually a very negative thing. So that's it for today. Let me know if you disagree with what I said. Let me know if you agree. Hopefully you will take some of my suggestions for how to cut down on your social media use, how to monitor and check your social media use if you're using it too much, to stop using it so much, at least for a week, just 7 days, and see how much your life will improve, because I guarantee you your quality of life will improve. And one thing you can do too, I've mentioned this before, if you're out with friends and your friends are on their smartphones, just say, hey, can everyone just please put away their smartphones, because let's just talk with each other, because we don't have, it's not like we see each other all the time. So when we have this time, let's use it, okay? And just do that, and that will help progress your friendships forward on a much more efficient and faster manner than if you accept the fact that people are always going to be looking at their smartphone when they're hanging out with you. So that's one step you can do. And if you support me on Patreon, I would be forever in gratitude towards you, because as I said before, I basically am off YouTube, and not going to continue my YouTube channel because YouTube has shadow banned me, censored me, blackballed me, everything else, because of topics like this, but also because of financial topics, because I speak the truth, not only about social media, but I speak the truth about other topics like gold and silver and fiat currencies and stuff of that nature. So whereas I used to get a good amount of revenue from my social media monetizations, now YouTube and Google have demonetized everything, and this has happened now for at least the past 2 or 3 years. So if you decide to become a patron, you can visit our Patreon. You can visit me at Patreon, patreon.com/skwealthacademy. And actually, besides these free podcasts, there are bonus podcasts I put about building wealth, financial news on my Patreon accounts exclusively for my Patreon subscribers. But if you don't want to contribute, that's fine as well. We'll continue to put up the bulk of my podcast for free right here on iTunes, I think you can find me on Spotify yet. I have to check to see if they actually have added me to Spotify yet. And also on Blueberry, Blubrry. Okay, that's all for today. So I hope everyone has a blessed day. Always remember to remain grateful and always remember remain intensely curious. So long.